it's 3:05. We still have participants coming in, but let's get started and let's get this on the road. Yeah, so welcome once again, everyone, to Startup Growth Masterclass. We're so stoked to have you guys join us here today. Before we begin, just a little bit about Startup Growth, if you haven't really read the description before. Startup Growth is basically an initiative created exclusively for tech startup founders. And this free resource is powered for the community by the community. And it is essentially a growth-focused, practical and efficient masterclass that covers the more unique secret aspects of the startup growth realm. So we're going to get into the nitty-gritty and the technicalities of things here, and hopefully we'll bring you some actionable information that you can use for your own businesses. So you may be wondering what's in it for you. Just to give you a quick run through, firstly, you will be learning from experts, and this 2-hour session brings to you content sourced from experts in their own field, both regionally and internationally. So look out for that. We have more episodes coming up with different experts from all around the world. It's no secret who our expert for this session is. However, let's give it some time for me to introduce him real soon. And secondly, you get to connect with the community. So feel free to drop messages in the chat group if you want to know someone better. We're joined here by wonderful community partners, fellow startup founders and expert speakers. And Michele is right there, so if you want to shoot some questions to him, go ahead. We intend to host a session every once a month, so we hope that over time you'll get to know us better and each other as well. And lastly, we are bringing to you some access to exclusive rewards. So we have a mix of tools, technology, people, and programs designed to optimize your performance. This is by AWS, so we'll go. They will have a chance later to share some of what their offerings are, and we also want to make sure that we give you the best promotions and exclusive offers. So make sure you stick with us throughout the session, and we'll be dropping you some important links in the chat. Look out for that, and they will lead you to some cool rewards. So stay tuned. Speaking about our community partners, we would just like to give a big shout out to the community partners who have come on board with us, namely MDEC, Dojo KL, AWS, of course, Nexia, and Scale Up Malaysia. Thank you so much for your support, and great to have you guys on board. So let me just go through a brief run-through of the rundown of what's going to happen. You'll be with us for the next 2 hours, and we hope that you will stay tuned and entertained. But just a few things that we'll be covering. Firstly, an introduction by Amazon Web Services, and then we'll dive into the first segment entitled Think About Scaling from Day Zero. And then we will open up for a Q&A session, followed by the second segment about when is the right time to scale, another Q&A, and then how do you reach 600 million people living in Southeast Asia, followed by the final Q&A. And after which we will share with you some special promos and give you a teaser of what's next. Just some session norms before we begin. I'm sorry, that's a little small, but we will be guiding you throughout, so you will notice that you are automatically muted, both your microphones and your videos. So you don't have to worry about anything until we tell you that. Number 2, we are open for Q&A. So if you have a question later on, you will need to request for permission to speak, and you will need to turn on your microphones and videos. Not to worry, we will actually guide you through that process. And in the meantime, please use the chat box to ask any questions you might have. And don't forget to leave your name and your startup name along with it so that we know who you are. Okay, so I think you guys already know who's coming up next. So thank you so much, Kayang, for sharing all of that. I've put in his contact details in the chat. If you want to know more, please go ahead and reach out. And now to introduce our speaker. So without further ado, our speaker today is Michele Ferrario. And he's the co-founder and CEO of StashAway. And in a very remarkable time, he has built StashAway to a team of 90 across 5 countries, including Singapore, Malaysia, UAE, Hong Kong, and Thailand. So he was previously responsible for expanding ZALORA by 15 times. He was the Group CEO there. And now he seems to be doing the same thing with StashAway. So what are his methods and how does he do it? So let's hear it from him. Without further ado, Michele, take it away.
Thank you, Charissa. And thanks everyone for dialing in today. So let me share quickly my screens. I've prepared a few slides. And then Charissa, I will just ask you to confirm that you can see it.
Sure.
Can you let me know when you can see the screen?
Still loading.
Okay.
And we're live, yeah.
Good, perfect. So the title that, or the subject that Charissa and the team have asked me to talk about is a playbook to grow exponentially in Southeast Asia. Now, I don't think there is a playbook, so that's why I called it my perspective, meaning I give you my point of view. And it may work in certain instances, may not work in others, and I'm sure there is going to be people that may disagree with some of my points of views. Now, the way that I've structured the presentation is that I'm going to spend the next couple of minutes just giving you a little bit of background on myself. And the reason I do this is that hopefully that helps you put my points of view in a framework. I understand where the point of view comes from. And also it gives you a bit more tools to think about what type of questions you can ask me and I may be able to answer, and what type of questions I may not be able to answer. And then we'll dive into my thoughts, and I've split it into 3 pieces. And at the end of each piece, we'll stop for Q&A. And the way you can ask questions is there is a chat button somewhere, I guess, on the bottom right side of your screen. So if you write questions there, Charissa will actually help me read those questions and try to put them at the right place during the course of the presentation. I'll try to keep, so thank you in advance, Charissa, for your help.
Okay.
And I will try to keep the presentation as quick as possible so that we can spend as much time as possible answering questions, if that works. Okay? So let me start. And as I mentioned, sorry, I lost my mouse. Here it is. Okay. So as I mentioned, the first thing I want to talk about for a couple of minutes is who I am and what I do. And the reason I want to do that is give you some context. And so first of all, what I do today. So I'm the co-founder and CEO of a company called StashAway. I'm one of 3 co-founders. And StashAway is a digital wealth management company. We are live in Singapore and Malaysia. So I saw that most of you are based in Malaysia, where you can actually go to stashaway.my and you can see what we do there. The way we describe internally our mission is we want to empower people to build wealth for the long term. Or in the way that is now written on the screen is we want to make it we want to make investing convenient and intelligent, like it should be. And the reality is that this is an industry that is broken, and we think that with the help of technology and with a kind of innovative and customer-centric view, we can really help fix it and help provide clients with better service. Now, let me maybe spend a couple of minutes on my journey to where I am today. Again, logic here is I want to give you some background on so that you can you can understand where my points of views come from. So I have a bit less than 20 years of experience at this point in my professions, and you can split my career in 2 pieces. The first half, more traditional in and around financial services, and the second half, building consumer internet companies. So I started at McKinsey, which is a consulting company back in Italy, where I'm from. Worked for them first in Italy, then in the US, always with banks and insurances as main clients. I then moved back to Italy, joined a private equity fund called Synergo, doing growth equity investments in growth companies. And then I completely changed career. I joined a company called Rocket Internet. It's a venture builder out of Germany. They asked me to found the Italian office. So in early 2012, I founded Rocket Italy. My job was to launch new companies in Italy. I've launched 2. I was then asked to do Pakistan. I've launched 3 companies in Pakistan for Rocket. And then toward the end of 2012, Rocket asked me to move to Singapore. This was now 8 years ago. And take the leadership of one of the larger investments they had in this region, a company called ZALORA, who you might have heard as it's kind of quite well known in Malaysia and in Singapore as well. And so I was the Group CEO of ZALORA. When I joined the company, ZALORA was already fairly large in terms of kind of structure. It had 1,500 employees spread across 7 countries. And my job has been on one side to make sure that not only the structure, but also the top line was large enough. So scaling the business. And secondly, also make sense of the structure. And then 4 years ago, I decided to leave ZALORA and Rocket, and I met my 2 co-founders, and together we started building what StashAway. And now we are 4 years into the journey. We started exactly 4 years ago, July, August 2016. We have been live for around 3 years in Singapore, for close to 2 years in Malaysia. We now have a team of around 90 people between Singapore, KL, and we now have new smaller teams in Bangkok, Hong Kong, and Dubai. To close down on this, kind of at Rocket, my job was really to do the first 6 months, so launching the companies and hiring the founders and help them get off the ground. And I've done it 5 times, as I mentioned, twice in Italy, 3 times in Pakistan. At ZALORA, I actually joined when the company was already 1 year old, so I actually did the second stage of scaling up. And StashAway, I've obviously started from scratch, so we're doing the whole journey from day 0 to, at this point, we are at 4 years into the game, and we raised Series B last year, and further news to come quite soon. Okay. Now I will assume there's no questions on my personal path, and I'll jump into the first point. So as mentioned, we're going to try to speak about what are the key ingredients to scale in Southeast Asia. And so I want to split it into 3 pieces. First is you need to start thinking about scale from day 0. That's my point of view, of course. Second is I would like to discuss when is the right time to scale. When is too early, when is too late, when is the right time. And lastly, we're talking about Southeast Asia. Southeast Asia is a large region with more than 600 million people. Let's talk about the market for a second to kind of put the first couple of thoughts into perspective. Okay, so what we'll do is we'll start with point 1. I'll give you a few thoughts, and then we open for questions. And obviously, feel free to start writing the questions as they come up. Charissa will help me organize them and try to answer them at the end of section 1. Okay, I'll spend maybe 5 to 10 minutes on a presentation. It's literally 2 or 3 slides per point, and then we can answer questions. Okay. So first, think about scale from day 0. What does that mean? There are 4 elements I want to talk about, which are all necessary for scale, and they're all things you want to start thinking at the beginning, as you think about the business. The first and most important one is definitely the team. I also want to briefly talk about legal structure. I want to talk about technology a little bit, even if I'm not a tech guy, and the kind of people at AWS in the call are definitely better suited than me to advise you on this. And one of my 2 co-founders is our CTO and has 20 years of experience building tech companies. I have not ever written a line of code in my life, so I'm not going to be technical. I'll just give you kind of a CEO perspective on this. And lastly, market sizing. So let me maybe start from the last piece. If you're building, so for market sizing, if you're building a company and you want to build a company in a large, you want to make it large, and you're thinking about raising venture capital to fund that growth, and you're thinking about hiring people, then one of the real questions you need to ask yourself quite early is, how big is the market you are targeting? And is that market big enough for you to build the scale you need in order to make it interesting enough for people that want to fund it? interesting enough for people that want to join you, and interesting enough for you at the end of the game. So, and market sizing is, don't spend too much time, don't become a consultant in the process. Try to just really think about, what do you need to believe in order to make the company a viable company? Do you need to take, 300% market share? Then maybe you don't believe in that. Do you need 3% market share of a given market? Then maybe, maybe if you're successful, you can do it. Do you need 0.01% market share to make it profitable? Then, you really, it means the market you're addressing is quite large. So maybe that's one of the first questions you want to start to look at even as you think about the idea, even before starting execution. The other 3 points are really execution type of topics. Let me move on to legal structure. So you want to make sure that you build a clean company from day zero. I wrote it legal structure. What that means is you want to make sure that you have contracts written the right way, you have the legal entity in the right jurisdiction, you have if you want to have stock options, you have for your employees, you have stock options written in the right way. You need to have the ownership of the intellectual property within the legal structure. You want to have a number of things that will make your company easier to scale. It will make it easier for you to raise money. It will avoid making you lose time when you don't have time, when you are trying to close a fundraising round down the road, and you need everything to go smoothly, and you can't have a problem coming up in the due diligence. And those things pile up from day zero. So think about legal structure, legal documents very early on, because it's easier to start clean than to clean up later. And another kind of a adjacent topic is accounting. So trying to have clean accounting books from day one, because again, it's easier to have clean books from day one, and it's actually not expensive at all, than to have to clean up the books after a year or two, when there's going to be a bunch of problems everywhere that you don't even know where they are, and attracting an accountant that actually wants to solve those problems will be very difficult. You don't need to hire an accountant. You can use third-party services, and when you're small, they're actually quite affordable. But again, I'm just stressing this because these are the kind of things that become problematic down the road. And I'm kind of going from least important to more important. Third point I want to talk about is technology. So I'll talk about it later, but Southeast Asia is a large region, but it's also a very diverse region. It means that you probably need to be in different countries if you want to build a large company. And if you want to be in different countries, you may have to deal with different languages. You may need to deal with different currencies. And if you are a regulated entity like StashAway, you may need to deal with different regulators. And you need to deal with different privacy laws. And maybe some countries actually require you to keep the data of your clients onshore, et cetera, et cetera. So there are a number of complexities on the tech side, which are driven by the diversity of Southeast Asia, that you may want to think about from day zero. And therefore, as you build your tech stack, think about what's going to happen when I go to country number 2 and number 3. What's going to break down? Am I going to be able to translate the website, translate the platform or not? Am I going to be able to change the hosting situation? Maybe you are working through AWS on the cloud, and are you going to be able to potentially have another country in a different AWS instance? Yes or no, if required, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So I don't have answers to these topics. It's something that I think you should just think about from day zero, because again, this is where you may spend, you may lose 2 years, right? If at a certain point the company is working and you want to go to new countries, and then you need to refactor completely your infrastructure, maybe you lose a year. And maybe that's a year you don't have. Lastly, but definitely not leastly, you want to think about a team that can scale from day zero. And a team that can scale means a team that is able to roll up their sleeves and do a lot of things at the beginning, but also a team that has the ability to grow within the company. Yeah? And then maybe I'll stress this a little bit. So if you can remember only one of my perspectives today, please remember this. Start from the team. the team is, I know you've heard it many times, but this is something that, I can't stress enough. Starting from the team is absolutely key, and is the type of thing that will save you a lot of time down the road. And maybe let me elaborate on this with 4 practical suggestions. First, go top down. Start with your co-founders. At the end of the game, if you start by starting immediately by hiring the more junior people, and then you add people on top, it's going to be very difficult to build the culture. It's going to be very difficult to attract the right quality of people. I'll give you an example. As I mentioned earlier, I'm not a developer. If I didn't have a co-founder and CTO with me, I would have not been able to hire, so to attract and select high-quality engineers, because I'm not able to test whether an engineer is high quality or not, and because a high-quality engineer would not be attractive working with me. So having strong co-founders that complement your capabilities is of utmost importance. Second, don't be in a hurry, ever. You're going to find yourself many times in a situation where you really want to have that one person fill a role, and you want that to happen yesterday, and it's taking weeks, and it's taking months, and you can't find the right person, and you interview people and you don't like them. And at a certain point, you will have the kind of the push to say, you know what, this is good enough. Let's just hire this guy. And that's a mistake. Never lower the bar. You're going to lose way more time by lowering the bar than by waiting until the right person comes into the door. And the reason you're going to lose more time if you lower the bar is that the person you hire is going to kind of work out for a few months, maybe 6 months, and then after 6 months you realize actually it doesn't work out, and then you need to fire this person, and then it's going to take another 3 months to hire a new person. And long story short, you lost a year. It's much better to spend another month or 2 looking for the right person than losing a year because you just brought on board the wrong one. Third, hire attitude over everything else. So don't hire ever somebody that you don't think you will enjoy working with. Don't hire ever somebody you will not have fun with. Don't hire ever a person that you will not like to have a beer with, or a glass of water, or a tea, or whatever you do with your friends. Don't do that, because that's gonna fight back very hard on you over time. So try to make sure that you put attitude at the top, and attitude means also attitude toward learning. So you want people that they don't know everything, and they know they don't know everything. That they know they need to learn. They know they need to study. They know they need to give 101% if they want to be successful. And lastly, higher potential over experience. There are very rare cases where experience is more important than potential, especially in young companies. Potential actually is the factor that you want to use when you hire people. You want people that are hungry, that have the capabilities to grow as fast as a company, if not faster, and therefore they are able to grow with the company and actually grow the company. So higher potential over experience. So this is my 4 kind of team scalability kind of a suggestion. Go top down and start with co-founders. Never be in a hurry to hire. Always wait for the right person to walk into the door. Pick attitude over everything else, and pick potential over experience all the time. At least this is my personal rules. As I mentioned, this is my perspectives. Okay, so why don't we open it up for question? Teresa, do you want to help me here?
Yep. Okay. Yes. I think we had one in the chat. So this one's from Isabel from BusyBuds Co. Yeah, and her question is, how do we know if the team has the ability to grow?
I think there are 2 stages, right? One is at the recruiting process, and 2 is over time. And at the recruiting process, as I just mentioned, you want to test for attitude and potential. And attitude is, you want to kind of put the person maybe in understand how a person reacts to a difficult situation, how the person reacts to an unknown situation, whether the person that you are interviewing actually comes across as aggressive, or as overconfident, or as somebody that will not be humble enough to continue learning, because the reality is that building a company is a learning adventure, and you need people that learn. So that's one thing you can do to look at attitude. And attitude is, honestly, I don't think it's easy to test attitude during a conversation. I think it comes a lot from doing it over and over again and seeing many people. And sometimes, I mean, I joke always with my colleagues and say, if I don't walk out of an interview room, or lately from a video room, feeling in love with the person I'm interviewing,
yeah,
usually not the right person. And so that's, is that a kind of scientific method? Probably not. But I think it works quite well. It's the same way, if somebody asks you, how do you pick your partner, your husband, your wife, your girlfriend, your boyfriend, it's not a scientific method. There is a little bit of gut feeling there, right? And or a lot of gut feeling there. And, there is a component of that in terms of attitude. And then in terms of potential, test a person for just pure brain power and for pure, potential is driven by two things. One is, again, attitude. Will this person give 110% so they will learn faster than everybody else? And then you understand from a little bit from what the person has done before in his or her life at school. Was it a good student or not? If you're a terrible student, probably you didn't kind of give 110%. And maybe if in the meantime you won the Olympics, fair enough. But if I understand you were just focused on excelling at something else. But if you didn't, then maybe there is something wrong with your attitude and with your ability to just be precise and go to the details and understand how to excel in whatever you do. And again, this is the kind of the attitude. And then secondly, there is just a component of pure potential, and depending on the role, that could be pure analytical brain power for some roles, or it can be, for a graphic designer, it may actually be, pure skill set. I can't judge those skills for a graphic designer because I'm terrible as a graphic designer. But so I wouldn't kind of try to look at that. But I hire people that can do that for me. And what I do is I look at potential and attitude more broadly.
Right. Okay, nice. So basically, really, it could be just a gut feeling, the kind of energy the candidate is putting out to you, if you're in love with them at the onset. And of course, so basically you evaluate them based on the energy that they put out when they're having a conversation with you. And also you assess them on their brain power as well by having conversations on different topics and things like that.
Yes, and I don't think there is a rule. I don't like to give interview tips because I've been forced in the past to use somebody else's interview scheme. Mm-hmm. And I can't judge people when I use a scheme that is on mine. So, for instance, I do case interviews because that's what I learned when I was young and when I was a consultant. And for me, it's a good way to understand a person. But I understand that there are other people that prefer to kind of peel the onion of personal experiences, like the Amazon way. And I don't think there is a right or wrong. I think it's just personal style.
So I think that answers the question from Deep here, who asked, can you give us some interview tips on how to evaluate these qualities? I think Michele has covered that. There's another question here about how's your relationship with your CTO or tech in general, and how do you put them in a position to deliver as fast and as much as possible? So I assume this is in terms of the team you already have. What's your relationship with them, and how do you ensure they deliver?
Yeah, so there is a famous quote from Howard Schultz, who's the Starbucks. He's not a founder, but kind of is the guy that made Starbucks what is Starbucks today. And he says, hire people smarter than you and get out of their way. And that's my approach to tech. So because I'm not a tech guy, I was lucky enough to find an amazing tech co-founder, and I got out of his way as much as possible. And obviously, when he wants to brainstorm about something, I'm always available. And when we talk about product roadmap, because that's more of it has a big business component. Obviously, I'm quite involved, but I'm not going to question him on whether to do something it takes 1 week, a month, or 2 months. I trust that he and his team will do their best to do it as well as possible, as fast as possible. Again, if you hire well, everything else comes by itself.
That's right. And I think you said the key word there. You trust them to do their work, so you get out of their way, and
Absolutely.
that works out. Yeah. Okay, maybe we can do one more. So this one is on a different tangent, but out of the 4 perspectives that you mentioned earlier, in light of the current crisis, how has that affected your perspective on those 4 areas and work relationships?
So 4 areas of how you build a team, you mean?
Yeah, correct.
I don't think it did change in any way, meaning that, I think the 4, I'm going to go back to show you what are the 4. Let's see if I can. Yeah. So I think my suggestion remained the same. Go top down, co-founders first. Don't be in a hurry. I think that remains, and everything else remains. To be honest, if you're building a team now, it's not a bad time to do it because there is a lot of people looking for a job. So actually, in a way, if you are on the hiring side today, actually you are in a good position. There is because of the unfortunate situation where we are economically, there is actually quite a few companies that are either letting people go or not hiring, and therefore it makes the market less competitive. It's a good way to actually hire better people that you may have access otherwise.
Nice. Great. So that's like a good formula to have. Then it sees you through whatever situation as well. So one last one, and then we'll continue with your next segment. The question is, have you ever hired someone, loving them as an individual, but later realized that they can't work with the team? And if so, what did you do? Can you tell us a story?
Yeah, so to be honest, the StashAway hiring story so far has been incredibly successful. Meaning we had very few people that didn't work out. Very few, 2 or 3, and we're all kind of not working out, not because of team fit, but rather because maybe they didn't grow with the company. And 2, 3 people out of close to 100 over the course of 4 years is tiny number because we spend so much time hiring. Like, to give you a sense, I still spend maybe 10 hours a week interviewing people to this day. Like, just before this call, I actually did an interview, and after this call, I have another interview, just to give you a sense. So it's a relentless focus on attracting and selecting the right people. Now, but maybe let me answer the second part of the question. What do you do about it? Look, as soon as you have somebody that doesn't work out, especially if the reason why it doesn't work out is that it doesn't work out with the team, you need to let the person go. The more you wait, the worse it's going to be. And I know it's not easy, but it's the only way forward. You cannot, if something is not working, you don't think that people will change, because people don't change. If it's not working, it's not working. Take a big breath and take action.
Okay.
And it goes back to what I said earlier about time. The earlier you do it, the less time you lose. Right.
Yep. So that's some tough love advice from Michele, and a good one, just so that you save your time. Yeah. So great. Nice. Keep the questions coming, and I think we can proceed to our second segment.
Yep.
Yeah.
So the second is, when is the right time to scale?
Yep.
And as I did in the previous section, I don't have 30 slides for you. I'll keep it super high level and give you a few perspectives, and then I'm happy to kind of have a Q&A. So given that the group is not gigantic, I hope that this makes it more relevant for what your questions are.
Yep.
So I wrote here kind of 3 elements: product market fit, team, and money. So is there a right time to scale? The answer is probably yes, meaning that there is a risk of scaling too early, and there is also a risk of scaling too late. And that's something that you should take into consideration. Now, you probably heard product market fit, many times, but let me kind of try to demystify what product market fit is. So I kind of wrote it down here, kind of my own definition. And I wrote down, you have numbers that prove that your target clients are willing to pay for your product or service an amount that more than repays for your cost of attracting them. The venture capitalists will call this the CLV CAC equation. So customer lifetime values on one side, customer acquisition cost on the other one. Why is this a metric you want to do? Because until this is true, if you scale, you're just going to trash money. So if this is not true, scaling means taking money and burning it, which is not what you want to do, right? It's not scaling. Sooner or later, money will stop coming to you. So that's super, super key. Now, once you are in this situation, you need to check that they continue to pay. So one thing is people are willing to try and pay once. The second question is, are they continuing to pay? So if you have a subscription model, what is your churn? How many people can you retain? If you have a transactional model, how many purchases a year does a customer make on average? And how much, and do you have any cost in reacquiring that customer, or does it come back by himself? And obviously, kind of the ideal flywheel in these cases is when not only a customer comes back, but he brings back friends, right? So when you have somebody that through word of, you have a virality effect. So, you take a customer, a person, you convince him to become a client, the client starts spending, and then not only continues to spend with you, but also brings his friends, his wife, his husband, his brother, his sister, his father, his mother, and whatever else, right? So that's what you want to happen. And very important what I wrote at the beginning, you have numbers that prove. So it's not your gut feeling. You need to have numbers that prove that your target clients are willing to pay more than their cost of acquisition. And then lastly, once you know all of this, the next question you need to answer yourself, which is more difficult to answer, is, will it still be true at scale? And the reality is that you need to make sure that you don't get fooled by the early adopters problem. So it may be easy to find the first 50 people that are completely in love with your product, and their customer acquisition cost is super low, and they are happy to throw money at you for your service. But if it's only 50 people, when you start saying, okay, now I want to go to 5,000 people, then it might not work. So you really need to ask yourself some hard questions about whether the product market fit you're showing is scalable, or is a product market fit just because you got the right niche, and that niche may be too small. So again, and you're better off asking yourself these questions rather than having investors ask you their question down the line. So the earlier you realize, you prove this point, the earlier you're going to be able to scale. Now, if you scale before you have answers to this question, what's going to happen is that you're going to run out of money, because at a certain point you're not going to be able to attract enough money to continue pumping into the system, and that that kind of it will hit a wall. So that's why it's so important to start from product market fit. Now, the second piece I mentioned is money. Well, maybe here I just want to give you one piece of advice. So what does it mean that you can scale when you have money? It means that you now have good enough numbers that you can attract capital, or maybe you have yourself capital, to invest further into scaling the organization, scaling marketing, and scaling whatever you need in order to scale revenues as well. And if you are looking for external capital, remember one thing. This is, again, one piece of advice. Investors invest in lines, not in dots. What does that mean? If you go to some investors today and you say, look, this is what we're doing, and this is what we want to do next year, can you fund us? It's going to be a difficult conversation. If you start developing relationships early on with investors, and you tell them, look, now I'm doing this, I'm at point A, in the next 6 months I'm going to do A, B, and C, and I'm going to come back to you in 6 months and ask you to fund me in order to be able to do D, E, and F. And then 6 months later, you go back and say, hey, you remember I told you I was going to do A, B, C? I've done A and B. C didn't work out, but actually I did D already. And now I want to do E, F, G. Can you help me do that? And that's going to be a much easier conversation because investors will see that you actually delivered on your promises, and therefore they will have a higher likelihood of believing in your future plans. So the synthesis of this message is start as early as you can to develop relationships with investors that may become useful down the road. Okay, and that also will make fundraising faster because if people know you, then will actually make it faster. And then lastly, I'm going to go back to team, and I know that I'm kind of a bit boring on this topic, but I do, if you ask me, one suggestion is always to just focus on the people, and that's why I keep talking about it. So as you scale, your team needs to scale. And maybe the biggest complexity is finding the right balance between scaling the people you have and bringing in external talent. If you take an approach where you simply bring in external talent and you don't let your kind of initial team members take more responsibilities, then you're going to create a culture where people will see there is a ceiling above them, and people may actually not want to give their 110% because they will not be able to get the bigger responsibility because they will expect you to hire somebody externally. And over time, the higher potential people will actually leave. On the other side, if you only rely on scaling the people you have, you might have some gaps in experience or some gap in seniority, because maybe some of the people you need when you are at a certain size are different of the type of people that were attracted to your company 1, 2, 3, 4 years before. And so finding the right balance between those two elements is actually quite tricky, and it's something that you want to kind of play very carefully. And so kind of to wrap up before we open to questions, when is the right time to scale? It's where you have the right product market fit, you have the money to invest in scaling the organization, the marketing, or whatever you need in order to kind of continue to build the company. Either you have the money or you have the numbers to get the money. And 3, you have thought through what the organization looks like a year down the road, and you're starting preparing for that, because building an organization takes time. So you need to be a little bit ahead of the game. You need to be starting to think, okay, I need a kind of a new CEO. I need 3 more people on on the sales team. I need X, Y, Z, and you need to start preparing for that a bit earlier. Okay, so product market fit, money, and team. Maybe we'll open up for questions.
Sorry. Okay. Yes. All right. Nice. Wonderful insight there on scaling. Okay, so we're going to try and do this Q&A slightly differently. And Michele, I'm going to stop your shared screen for a second.
Yep.
You can do that in a bit. And what we're going to do is actually open up the room for you guys to ask your questions directly to Michele. And how you can do that, just one second, let me just share my screen. But you can try it now, actually. There is a microphone and a video icon right next to your name. So if you click on it, you're actually asking us for permission to speak. So if you want to try that, go ahead. Anybody want to try that? Q&A? And ask Michele a question directly. Okay, we have one. Okay. Oh, no, we don't. Anybody want to ask questions? Okay, but in the meantime, there was one about how do you know how much and how far to scale? And can you tell us how you have done it before?
I think the goal is to scale as much as you can. And so it depends a little bit on what you see from your top line numbers. And you need to adjust your you want to adjust your organization to make sure that you can support that scaling. So we have been, if I can give you kind of the StashAway situation now, we've been growing a bit more than 300% year over year quite consistently. And that means that because we see this type of growth and we kind of predict that growth will be maybe slowing down in percentage term or in the future, because it's going to be tough to maintain 300% over a much larger base. But still, we need to continue thinking about how we kind of continue to scale organization to sustain that growth. And there are two parts of it. One is build the market scaling. So open new countries, for instance, or open new channels, or launch new products. Those are things that you can do. And the other thing is simply, which is part of what happened with StashAway, is that simply more and more and more people want to use the service, and therefore we just need to react a little bit to it and just make sure that the organization is strong enough to be able to, instead of serving, I'll just make random numbers, instead of serving 1,000 customers, you can serve 2,000, and then 5,000, and then 10,000, and 20,000, and then 100,000. And that you need to think about what are the factors in your operations that may break. There is a beautiful book, very old book called The Goal, which is a book that is used in business schools for operations class, and it's actually a novel, so it's very easy to read. It probably takes you one afternoon, and I think it's worth reading, as it talks about the theory of constraints, or it talks about bottlenecks. And when you finish reading that, you're going to start thinking about bottlenecks all the time, and that's exactly what you have. As you scale, you need to solve for your bottlenecks, making sure that what are the bottlenecks that will actually hamper your growth, or even worse, destroy the company.
Sorry, what was the name of the book again?
The Goal.
The Goal. Okay. Okay, so once again, for those of you who want to ask your questions live, there is a box above the chat box, participants, and you will need to find your name and just click on the microphone icon and the video icon next to your name. Okay. We have actually a couple of questions while we wait for that. Oh, but we have someone from... Okay, no, he ran away. But in the meantime, there's another question here. Oh, okay, so we have someone here.
Hello.
Hi.
Hi.
Thank you for the information. It's very useful. My question is a little bit on different side. Does American VC companies invest in European companies? Because we know that most of them are focused on the US market. Thank you.
Look, there are different stages. I give a broader answer because I think most of the companies in the chat are actually based in Southeast Asia. So I'll give a broader answer, but which applies to you as well. I think at different stages of development of a company, the type of investors that will be interested in your company will change. And so early on, for like seed stage, Series A stage, up to Series B stage, investors tend to be local. So it's very difficult to raise a Series A round or a seed round for a European company from a US-based investor, or for a Southeast Asian company from a US-based investor. As the size of the rounds grow and the size of the company grows, then you start having a more global marketplace. So you start having global investors based wherever they're based, investing in companies everywhere in the world, and that's true in Southeast Asia as well. So to use kind of the Southeast Asian names for people that may be familiar with it, you're going to see the Series A round led by people like Golden Gate Venture or Qualgro or Open Space, et cetera, et cetera. Those are local brand names. And then as the companies grow, if you look at the people raising Series C, Series D, Series E, you start seeing kind of the Naspers of the world coming. You start seeing some of the US investors that you may have never heard of, or the Japanese investor that you may have never heard of, or the Chinese investor you may have never heard of. Now, one caveat is that now there is a lot of global investors that have local offices. So, in Europe, there is a lot of US investors that have European offices, and those behave like European investors. Similarly, in Southeast Asia, you have Sequoia, who's a US investor that obviously has offices in India and Southeast Asia. You have, one of our investors is 8 Roads. 8 Roads is Fidelity, and they have an office in Singapore and an office in India. And therefore, those behave like local investors.
I see. Okay, thank you for the answer. It was very useful again.
All right, thank you, Valentin.
I think there is Charissa, I think there is a question from Alex asking, he runs a, I guess, software as a service based product company. What is your advice to get initial subscribers fast and furious? I think, it's difficult to give a general answer. And Alex, if you want to kind of jump in and ask a more specific question, I'm happy to address it in more detail. But depending on the type of product, the answer is different. So in a way, we have a little bit of a software as a service model as well, meaning that our customers pay, a subscription fee based on their assets. And what you need to do is start creating an initial base of customers that try the product, give you feedback on the product, and so that you can improve on the product. And over time, hopefully those customers will become your ambassadors. They will talk to will create a flywheel of a flywheel of customers calling customers. Alex, I don't understand what are the carrots means. Sorry, I think I lost you on that follow-up question. So, in software as a service based product company, you usually, if you're an enterprise, okay, what can you do to attract customers? Again, it depends from who you're attracting. So who are your target customers? What is the product like? And if you are a B2B software as a service, then you need to think about what are your target customers, and I recommend starting to segment the market and think about what are the early adopters. Try to go to these early adopters, and then over that increasing. I see now that your company is B2C. Then the reality is that for B2C acquisition, you need to use marketing. It's not a sales job. So B2B companies usually have sales team. B2C companies have marketing teams. What you need to do is you need to create a brand. You need to do, usually performance marketing through, the usual suspects, Facebook and Google type of channels is on top of social media, etc., are what drive initial recognition, and hopefully you can start from that. In our case, we are a B2C, and you can call us a software as a service. When we started with most of our budget going to performance marketing, so Facebook and Google mostly. And then on top of it, we had a branding budget. We did advertising on MRT stations in Singapore. We've done advertising on BFM in Malaysia. We've done advertising on LRT in Malaysia. Things like this to kind of complement our online advertising. But the reality is then you need the word of mouth to kick in.
Right. Okay, we have one more question from Arif, who's going to come through. What happened?
Sorry, there is. Let me clarify one thing to Alex. Yes, Alex, brand and marketing. And if you have limited resources, start from performance marketing. Branding only makes sense when you start having a bit more resources. So if you have to pick one thing and you don't have a lot of money, start with performance marketing and test. And that's how you get the first few customers. And if you can't get them, it means that you don't have the product marketing we mentioned.
Hi.
Okay.
Hi, Arif.
Hi, thank you, Michele, for wonderful insights. I just wanted to know, coming from a tech background, working towards human-first solutions, as Asians are we have a lot of people here. There's a lot of market, and we are building human-first solutions product. And quantifying and measuring growth in numbers is kind of getting harder. So my question would be, how do we measure this kind of solutions, this kind of situations, or even this kind of product, and produce convincing reports for the investors to know, okay, there's some growth, for partners to know, all right, that's something we can do about it. And even for customers to actually measure, okay, there are 10 products here, which one do I choose? So perhaps.
So Arif, let me understand something better. Why? So my answer is that you will need numbers. And so just let me understand why you can't provide numbers. What do you mean with human, how do you call it?
Human-first solutions.
What do you mean with that?
So for instance, there are training providers. There are other type of solutions that requires qualitative information that we do with humans. There are complex human emotions that we work with. How do we convert that to numbers? How do we make those measured in numbers?
You can always convert to numbers. How many people are using the system, for how long, let's say it's a training solution for a second, right? Just as a case study. how many people are using your training solution? For how long are they actually sticking to whatever training module they have? How many of them come back for a second training module? Think about what we're doing today, right? So, I guess Charisse and the team will look back and say, how many people actually logged into the masterclass? How many people log in again next time? How many people stayed for the full duration of the masterclass? And that's, I know this is free. So, the product market fit in this case, it's easier, but, then you can test and say, okay, let's see how many people are willing to pay $5 for this. How many people are willing to pay $10 for this? How many people are pay $20 for this? You can measure things.
All right. Okay.
All right. Thank you, Arif.
Thank you for some of those metrics. Thank you.
Awesome. Okay.
We lost you, Charissa. As we wait for Charissa to come back, I saw a question from Deep asking, so if you don't have a VC interest to invest in us, we should not scale. I think if you don't have money to sustain your scalability, to scale the organization and scale marketing and scale what you need to scale, you can't scale. It's not really your decision, right? You can't do that. So that's something that you need to kind of take into consideration. If you have the funds to keep scaling, trust me, if you actually manage to scale, VCs will come to you. So if you have enough funds or enough kind of money to continue scaling the company, definitely you should be doing it. What I'm saying is that at a certain point you run out of money because unless you run a cash profitable business throughout the scaling process, in which case, hats off to you. That's a very difficult thing to do, and then you don't need anybody to give you money.
Okay, nice.
So maybe let me add one thing.
Yeah.
There is a trade-off between kind of a scaling fast and therefore requiring outside money, and scaling slowly with own funds, so by actual positive cash flow. And there are certain industries where you do not have that option. So for instance, StashAway, if we were to just grow through our cash flow, we would grow too slowly, and we would not be able to capture the market. There will be somebody else doing it for us. Just too competitive. There's going to be other players. But if you are doing something really niche and really unique, where you have time, you can probably make the decision of funding your growth through internal cash flow. That's a luxury. It will take more time to get to a certain scale, but obviously you're gonna reduce significantly your risk as a founder.
All right. Okay, thank you, Michele, for that. We are going to wrap up the Q&A for segment 2. There is, however, something that I just want to take a quick intermission for. And it has everything to do with what Arif just asked, so about measuring and collecting data. So we would really appreciate it if you could give us your feedback on this session. And we have a special giveaway for those of you who do give us feedback for this session. And it is a 1-hour one-on-one mentorship session with Michele. So Michele has so graciously agreed to spend an hour with one of you. We haven't selected the winner yet, but in order to be in the running, you would need to actually send us some feedback on the session, and we will get in touch with you if you are the winner. So we are going to put the feedback link in the chat box right now. I think, as you can see, Michele is like ready for all your questions and is willing to share so openly. So yeah, so let's do that. I think it's in the chat right now. Yep. Okay, and we can proceed with our final segment. So Michele, back to you.
Yeah, I'm sharing my screen again. Give me just 1 second. Please let me know.
Yeah. By the way, amazing questions all around. Keep them coming. And we have one more segment for Q&A in just a while after this segment.
Can you see my screen?
Yep, perfect.
Good. So let's move on. So the third part was, where are we? And, how big is the market? And what does that mean? And, there are more than 600 million people in Southeast Asia. And projection says that in the next 10 years, it's going to go to 750 million. GDP per capita is supposed to double, and therefore GDP total is supposed to more than double, from $3.3 trillion to $7 trillion. What you see on the right side of the screen is early stage funding. So, and to deep points before, you can build a company without VC money. But the reality is that in most industries, you don't really have a choice, and unless you are lucky enough to either have made money earlier in your career or have been born from a family that has those funds. If in most industries, you'll actually, if you want to build a large company, you will probably need to get external capital. And so a good way to understand what's happening to the environment in Southeast Asia is to actually look at funding. And as you can see, from 2015 to 2019, the total funding in $1 million actually more than quadrupled, from 480 million to around 1.7 billion in 2019. And the number of rounds actually has not grown as much. So the reality of what's happening is that there is larger and larger round. There is around 400 companies getting funded in early stage rounds. So this is seed, Series A, and Series B over the course of every year. So there is a bit more than one company being funded every day in Southeast Asia at seed stage, Series A stage, or Series B stage. And as you can see, obviously, numbers have been growing over time from an average of a bit more than $1 million per round now to an average of around $4 million per round, 400 rounds at $1.7 billion. Now, what does that mean? Is that the market is gigantic and so you are in the right place at the right time? Not really, right? So reality is that Southeast Asia is a very interesting market with a lot of people and with growing economic power. A few years ago, I would have said with growing internet penetration, but to be honest, right now we could argue that internet penetration through mobile phones is already gigantic, and so you don't need any more than numbers to grow. But at the same time, it presents a lot of complexities. It's not like the United States, where you have 350 million people speaking the same language, paying in the same currency, culturally very, very similar, without borders, without customs within one place to the other, etc., etc. Here you have different countries with different currencies, different languages, different religions, very different regulations, depending on what is the type of business you're trying to do. If you are in e-commerce, for instance, you're going to have huge issues with customs, so it's not easy to move goods from one place to the other. You're going to have different partners in different countries. So in different countries, you might have, again, going on with the e-commerce example, you may need to have different delivery partners in different countries. So scalability in this region is actually very difficult compared to some of the more homogeneous regions of the world, like China or the US. At the same time, though, that presents an advantage, which is that because it's difficult, there is less people trying to do it, and there is less people that are able to do it. And you can see this as a good thing. It's a barrier to entry. It makes it possible for you to build a franchise that is more defensible, and therefore to build more value for yourself, your shareholders, and all of your team. So we are in a privileged part of the world with such a kind of a high growth market with so many people and such a kind of a positive momentum behind us, similar maybe to what happened in China 10, 15 years ago. At the same time, you need to deal with the complexity that come with. And one thing I always tell to my colleagues is that the willingness and the ability to face and solve very complex problems, like filing for a regulatory license in Thailand, for instance, is per se a competitive advantage, because there's not going to be a lot of people that have that willingness and that ability. So if you build an organization that has that drive, that can actually look at problems positively, try to solve them one by one, and every day is a different problem in a different country, in a different language perhaps, then actually you are able to build a distinctive organization that will be able to scale immensely in this region. So this is kind of this is it from a kind of a high-level perspective on the countries. Maybe it makes sense to go more into the details as you ask your questions. And yeah.
Yep. All right. Okay. So on that note, we already have a couple of questions here. So firstly, from Daniel, do you think Southeast Asia VCs are more conservative than US VCs? And if there are insufficient VCs in the earlier stages, such as pre-seed and seed, and how will this impact the ecosystem in the long run? Wow, that's a long one.
So I think that US venture capital tends to take business model risk, while other venture capitals in the world tend to avoid taking business model risk. What does that mean is that Airbnb, when it was launched 10 years ago or 12 years ago, was possible to find it in the US. Like, they found somebody that was willing to put money behind them, even if the business model was completely new. It would have been difficult to find in Southeast Asia, as well as in other Europe would be the same, just because investors here tend to follow business models that have already worked elsewhere. So in a way, yes, you could argue that VCs in this region may be a bit more conservative than VCs in the US. On the second part of your question, if there are insufficient VCs in the earlier stages, I think what happened in Southeast Asia is that there used to be, most VCs were actually very early stage, seed stage, and now they've kind of, because they were successful, now there is larger round of funding, and now they became Series A or even Series B investors, and therefore there has been maybe a little bit of a gap in at the seed stage. But at the same time, there is a maturing ecosystem of angels. So, for instance, I'm part of an angel investors network called XA Network. You can find a website, which is a kind of a group of tech professionals that invest in tech companies. We kind of, when people approach us, we share the deals among each other, and therefore, we are able to write checks, because we are pooling of funds. We are able to write checks in the hundreds of thousands of dollars through kind of just putting it together in a round. And there are actually also large VCs like Rocket Internet that invest kind of very early stage, even $1 million or $2 million. There is Sequoia that actually goes very early, and there is quite a few people. So I wouldn't say that there is a lack of seed. I think pre-seed is difficult to do with institutional investors, but that's true in the US as well. I think for pre-seed, you may want to go to the so-called friends and family or angel investors more broadly. I think during the presentation earlier, it was said that AWS has a kind of a connection with Y Combinator. I think if you are able to get into Y Combinator, it will actually help you a lot in raising early money, even in Southeast Asia. So I know a few Y Combinator companies in Southeast Asia, and they raise very nice early rounds, partially because of the One Combinator kind of stamp of approval. So I would second what was said earlier from Kai Yong, I think, on the ability to actually potentially use Y Combinator as a trampoline for your business.
All right. Okay. I see two questions in the chat that kind of correlate. So this one is about entering the market in Southeast Asia. One, Isabel asks, what is the easiest, I assume, country to penetrate? And the other one is, which country in the ASEAN do you find most challenging in terms of hiring and ease of getting the market message across?
So it's different. It's difficult to give you kind of a one-size-fits-all answer, because it really depends from what the business is. What you could, let me give you some broad perspectives. And again, these are my perspectives. So Indonesia is obviously the largest market for whomever is trying to address, whoever has a retail offering, right? Indonesia is obviously the largest market. That makes it also the most competitive. But it's also probably the one market where, if you win Indonesia alone, you're fine. Look at Gojek. Gojek, by just being large in Indonesia, is building a gigantic company. It's difficult to do the same in any of the other Southeast Asian countries. Is it the easiest to enter? I would say no. But if you ask to an Indonesian person, the Indonesian person will say, yes, I mean, it's my home country. They speak my language. I know the people. So it really depends on who you are and where you come from. I'm assuming that if you are Malaysian, the easiest country to enter for you is Malaysia. And then from Malaysia, you see, depending on the type of product you have, the more kind of a similar markets, I would say, that either Singapore or Indonesia. But obviously, I'm kind of being a bit specific, and it depends really from what is the kind of the type of product you're selling and what is the type of service you're offering. There is a kind of the second question you ask is, which country is most challenging in terms of hiring and ease of getting the marketing message across? I mean, on the second part, the marketing message, unfortunately, again, everywhere is difficult, and there are complexities in each market. So Thailand, for instance, from my ZALORA experience, is a market where social media is bigger and different from in other parts of Southeast Asia. And so you need to have a kind of a tailored, localized social media strategy. While maybe Malaysia, Indonesia, and Singapore are more similar to a certain extent. Philippines is also different in terms of cultural traits, and so you may want to kind of change your marketing message slightly as you go country by country. I don't think there is one that is easier to get the marketing message across, to be honest. I think it's just there are differences, but I wouldn't be able to tell you which one is easier, which one is more difficult. Again, depend a bit from the country. Let me use a stupid example. If, let's say, you're selling something that is connected to baseball, then I would tell you go to the Philippines, because it's the only country in Southeast Asia where baseball is actually a big thing. Start there, and then you can kind of find the niche markets in the other parts of the region. But that's why I'm saying it really depends on what you're doing and what the business, what is the product, what is the service you're offering. On the first part of the question from Shashi on where is the most challenging to hire, look, it depends also from what you're trying to hire. For instance, for tech, there is a lot of talent in Vietnam, quite a bit in Thailand, a lot of some talent, obviously more expensive, more senior talent in Singapore, and some talent in the Philippines as well. For operations and support, I would say Malaysia, Philippines are two great places. But in general, you don't need to hire 1 million people, most probably, right? So if you need to hire 10 people in marketing or 50 people in marketing, you're going to find 50 great marketing people in every country of Southeast Asia. It's just a question of looking for them.
Nice. All right. Okay, so that's the rundown on all the Southeast Asian countries from Michele's experience. And then there's one on why did StashAway choose Singapore?
Yes. So we chose. Yeah. Sorry. So yeah, from Daniel. Yeah, I'm reading that. So
okay.
We chose Singapore for I would say 3 reasons. The first and most basic one is that I knew, or I thought that it was a gigantic market gap in Singapore, and the reason is that I was in Singapore, and I had been there for 4 years, and I've been trying to invest my savings for 4 years, and I've been shocked by how bad the banks were in Singapore, and so I knew there was a market gap, and I talked to many people, and people kind of confirmed my theory, like they said, yeah, you're right. Other people had the same issues that I had. So one is I was very convinced there was a significant market. 2 is we are a regulated company, and the MES was probably the most open to. I actually say Malaysia was also similarly open when we started talking to them, but at the time I didn't know. So what we thought is that MES would have been the more open to innovation because of the whole kind of a fintech smart nation narrative that the government had been pushing. So we thought that the regulator would have been open to innovation. And again, as I mentioned, Malaysia actually was also very open, and conversations in other countries are actually been more difficult, but Malaysia was very similar to Singapore. And third is because we actually, so our product is, so our business model works on assets, not on people, not on heads. So for me, so Singapore is actually a large market because there is a significant wealth from, significant savings from people. And so that may, this is one of the few business models where actually Singapore is bigger than Indonesia as a market. And that's why we started from Singapore. And then there was a fourth consideration, which is that as a financial services company, we thought that being licensed and successful in Singapore would have actually helped our marketing message as we went to other countries. Because if you are in Malaysia or in Thailand, you may think that if Singapore, the largest Singapore wealth manager probably is reputable. It buys a little bit of trust in a way. So that's kind of that's one of the reasons why we chose Singapore. To the first part of your question, which is why don't start in the US? I mean, if you start in the US, you end in the US. The US is gigantic and it's very competitive. And companies like StashAway have been existing in the US for the last 10 years. We would have been player number 1,000 to launch in the US, while in Singapore we were the first one. And therefore, obviously, from a competitive perspective, you always have two things. Like on one side, there is a market size. On the other one is competitive environment. And we thought that there is a market gap in Singapore and Southeast Asia more broadly that I don't think there is in the US. Or better said, I thought we were going to solve a problem, or we are solving a problem in Southeast Asia that actually is not a problem in the US right now.
All right. Okay, I think that answers that. Again, the Q&A box is open. So if you want to come online and ask Michele a question, just need to tap on the mic icon next to your name and the video icon. All right. Okay, while we're waiting for that, we actually did collect some questions prior to the session. So maybe we could ask some of those. And in the meantime, if there are any questions, keep them coming.
Yeah, and as you open up, I see that Daniel was asking a question, but I don't fully understand. So maybe Daniel, you want to kind of tap and voice it over, because I don't fully understand. What if a new model that is new even in the US? I don't fully understand that.
Come online, Daniel. Okay, let me also share my screen. Okay, so let me just ask the question that was sent in prior to this. I think you mentioned social media. So there's one here. Is using social media a good method for long-term growth, given cost per click? I assume CPC is increasing over the years. How can we decrease our reliance on social media for new customers besides referrals? This is from Daniel Tan.
Yeah, so yes, social media should be one of your channels. I mean, depending on what your product is, but if it's B2C for sure, social media is probably a channel you want to explore. And you have two parts of social media, right? One is social media paid, so you pay cost per click. And the one is social media organic, and you probably want to have both. And how do you deal with growing CPCs over time is by making your message crisper. And the reality is that your paid CPC and your paid CAC will most probably increase over time. In order to maintain your total CAC under control, you need to make sure that your mix of channels improves in the right way, meaning that your free channel, organic channel, or better said, word of mouth, actually grows faster than CPC. And what does that mean is that you need to work on referral programs, you need to work on branding, you need to work on SEO, which is a free channel, you need to work on organic social media. So you need to make sure that those channels actually become relevant over time. Otherwise, you're right, that in most industries, CPC may grow over time.
All right, nice. Okay, I hope that answers it, Daniel.
And maybe actually, let me add one thing.
Yeah.
So CPC is a factor of two things. One is kind of what is called CPM, so cost per 1,000 impressions. And that's, you're right, probably goes up over time. And that's in practice the cost of the real estate on Facebook, for instance, or on Instagram. And then there is a second piece, which is the propensity of a person to click on your ad, and that's something you can actually work on. The bigger, the better your brand is, the more likely is somebody to click there. The better your advertising graphic design is, the more likely for people to click there. And those are ways to decrease CPC even with CPM growing.
Right, so that's a hack right there, just for you. And we have a question from Dave. How would you think StashAway will remain on top now that it starts to gain competitors?
My point of view is that our competitive advantage now and in the future is about kind of twofold. On one side, to continue to have a product, meaning a tech product that is superior to other people. And to be honest, even now that we have competitors, there's nobody that has an app, so the bar is very low. So there is a tech and product portion, and the second portion is obviously on the investment side. So making sure that our investment proposition keeps remaining more sophisticated and better suited for our customers than our competitors. How do we achieve that? Is by continuing to kind of work harder and invest more and talk to our clients and trying to address what our clients are asking us, which is something we do every day. So I think there's no secret sauce to it. It's just a question of kind of working harder than the rest and working smarter than the rest.
All right. Okay. And there you have it. Okay, I've checked the chat box. I think we covered all of the questions. And I think that brings us to 4:40 now, which is actually a little over the time that we allocated for your time with us. So thank you so much, Michele.
No worries. Can I just...
Great insights. Yeah, go ahead.
Thank you so much. Can I just... I wanted to share my screen 1 second because we have a...
Go ahead.
Let me just share 1 second the screen. I just wanted to give a little, so if some of the people have not yet tried StashAway, through the link that you see here, so bit.ly/3HRB5RZ, maybe you can actually write it, actually I can write it here, bit.ly/3HRB5RZ, you're actually going to be able to start trying StashAway for free, up to 50,000 ringgit invested. So this is a Malaysian code, so feel free to do that. And if you have any questions, you can see it at the bottom of the screen here, way to kind of reach out to our client engagement team.
Yep, and that's exactly what I was just about to share, which is fine. So yeah, Michele has already put the link there, and yeah, that's a special announcement for all of you who stayed till this point. Thank you so much. And there's a special promo just for you guys for the Malaysian code, and we have the link in the chat. Yeah, thank you so much, Michele, for sharing that. Surprise, everyone. Okay, and just a reminder, again, the free mentorship session with Michele is up for grabs. 1 hour, one-on-one with Michele. Amazing insights all around. He's answered your questions from end to end and then some. So I can guarantee that this session is going to be super valuable. So please do give us your feedback, and we will actually see who's best fitted for the session and the mentorship with Michele as well. All right. Sorry. So that's the promo by StashAway, and the link has already been sent in the chat. So make sure you click on it, and you can enjoy the free use of StashAway for a limited time. And that brings us to end the session with Michele. Amazing. Thank you so much for being with us for our first installment.
Thank you.
For those of you who are part of this, thank you so much. Michele, any last words for our participants?
No, I would just thank you all for kind of stay on and asking the questions. And I guess I'll talk to one of you in the next few weeks and see. Yes. So we will arrange the call. All details will be sent to the winner and to Michele, and it'll be a fun time. Perfect.
All right.
Thank you.
Sorry. Okay. Thank you, Michele. Thank you, StashAway. Again, amazing insights, and I hope that you guys have great takeaways all around on how to grow and expand and scale, all right, in Southeast Asia. And here's just a tease for what's coming up next month. So on the next episode of Startup Growth, we actually have Jose Cayaso. He is the CEO and co-founder at SlideBean, and he will be addressing the topic of creating killer pitch decks in times of crisis. So it's specified to our current time, and this is going to happen on the 13th of August. More information to come out. And for those of you who are already in our list, you will be receiving information on this as well. Just a little information on Kaya. He's actually the CEO at SlideBean and Founder Hub. He's a TEDx speaker, and he's also has earned recognition as a 40 under 40. Yeah. So look out for that. And here are some of the topics that we actually have in store for you. So we hope to run this session every month, a masterclass from experts on these topics. And we really hope that you stick with us and will join us for the next one. And that brings us to the end. So thank you so much for staying for the session. We are done slightly earlier than expected. But if you have any questions at all, the room is still on Q&A mode, so feel free to tap on the microphone and the video icon, and you can ask us some questions if you have any. Otherwise, you can always drop us a message at sgteam@startupgrowth.asia, and we'll get back to you. For more information on Startup Growth, feel free to visit our website. And that is all from us for today. So thank you very much, and hope you had fun.